Welcome to our channel History of Everything. Today we speak about History of Macau. The history of Macau is a city in southern China's Guangdong province, and was until the 20th of December 1999 an overseas Portuguese territory, founded in 1557. It is now a special administrative region within the People's Republic of China, which agreed to recognize the city's special social and economic system for a period of 50 years. Macau's status as an outpost of European settlement and commerce in China and its air of isolation gave it a special historical identity. Its population, while politically dominated by the Portuguese and their descendants, was always marked by an admixture of groups and by a steady influx of Chinese migrants. Since the early 19th century, the majority of the population was Chinese. Macau was located on the old Silk Route, and emerged as a major intermediary trading center in Southeast Asia in the 17th and 18th centuries. The name Macau is derived from the Chinese A Ma Gao Bay of A Ma. A Ma was the name of a Chinese goddess, popular with the Chinese seafarers and fishermen who had a temple on the peninsula when the Portuguese first anchored there in 1513. As a creation of the Portuguese, Macau represents a peculiar blend of Oriental and Western influences. This has given rise to a unique and hybrid urban culture, which gives the city an air of romance and nostalgia. At present, it is a rich commercial and industrialized city. Macau also has a reputation, dating from the 1920s and 1930s, as a place of smuggling, gambling, prostitution, and crime controlled by Chinese triads, crime syndicates. Macau's gambling houses were, and are famous across Asia and still form a popular Chinese tourist destination. Location and geography. Macau is located on a small peninsula and lies at the western shore of the Great Pearl River Delta, opposite Hong Kong. Together with its two islands, Taipa and Cologne, connected to the peninsula by large bridges, it measures only some 8.5 square miles, 22 square kilometers. Before inclusion into China in December 1999, Macau was separated from the mainland by the barrier gate Portas do Cerco frontier. The city has good air links, and ferry and hydrofoil service to the neighboring islands, the mainland, and Hong Kong. A large international airport was opened in 1995. There is no flora and fauna to speak of, as buildings have filled up most of the available space, and most primeval forest was used for construction and industrial purposes. Some pine forest remains on Cologne. In the late 20th century, significant land reclamation projects were carried out around the peninsula, creating space for new housing and industries, thus doubling the surface area of the city. The climate of Macau is subtropical and humid. Demography. The city's population is about 465,000, 1999, with 95% ethnic Chinese. The Portuguese comprise about 3% of the population, with the rest including other Europeans, Indians, and various other groups, such as Filipinos. Immigration from China's mainland has always been significant, fueled by the opportunities of Macau's international trade and dynamic urban economy. Especially in the 20th century, there was an exponential growth of immigration. At present, population growth is about 1.8% annually. Fertility, 1.27 children per woman, is low according to Asian standards. Almost 50% of the ethnic Chinese population was born outside Macau, but about 90% of the Portuguese were born in Macau. Linguistic affiliation. Indigenous languages spoken are Chinese Cantonese, Yu dialect and Min dialects, about 96% of the population, and Portuguese, about 4%. Beijing Chinese, Putonghua dialect, as a second language and growing in influence. For example, it is used in education. English is also expanding as a language in commerce and tourism. The old Macanese language Patua, or Makista, was a typical Creole language, based on Portuguese but heavily influenced by various Chinese dialects and by Malay. It has now virtually died out. Symbolism. The coat of arms of Macau shows two angels around a shield with a crown, one holding a cross and one holding a globe. Beneath is the motto, "City of the Name of God, there is none more loyal," which refers to Macau's Catholic identity and bond with the Portuguese motherland. What the status of this coat of arms will be under Chinese rule is unclear. As unofficial emblems or symbols of the town, one might see the casino as the emblem of modernity, giving the city its main income, and the lone facade of St. Paul's Cathedral as an apt symbol of Macau's past. This facade, a typical Portuguese structure, is the only remnant of an impressive Catholic church destroyed by fire in the 18th century. It may symbolize the near-token presence of Portuguese culture in a now predominantly Chinese city that owes the larger part of its wealth to the Chinese fascination with gambling and to the efforts of Chinese businessmen and laborers. History and ethnic relations. Emergence of the nation. Although Portuguese sailors first anchored in 1513 and started using the peninsula for provisioning, Macau as a town was founded in 1557. It was a fixed point on the trade route to the Far East. Macau always self-consciously maintained its bond with Portugal, even in times of war and turbulence. Religious identity played a great part in this. The city was a foothold for the Jesuits in their efforts to spread the gospel in Japan and China, though without much success. Beginning in the 16th century, other groups such as British Protestants, Japanese, and Indians also settled in Macau in small numbers. Macau thus emerged as a Portuguese colonial settlement with a European Christian identity, but as a result of its allowing Chinese immigration and settlement from early on, acquired a mixed character. Due to its open, commercial character and its weak military position vis China, there was never any exclusivist policy or national identity, though its political adherence was to Portugal. Macau-Chinese relations were occasionally tense but never violent. Macau's historical status contrasts with that of Hong Kong, which was forced by Britain from China in an unfair treaty and under the threat of violence. In 1887, Portugal by treaty received full sovereignty over Macau from China. This was reversed exactly 1 century later by a new treaty, ceding Macau to China. National identity. Macau is a peculiar amalgam of Portuguese and Chinese culture. This is evident in its rich and remarkable architecture, economic activities, and demography, as well as its political culture. Imperial, and later communist, China never gave up its claims to Macau as ultimately a part of China, but its relations toward Macau, and the Portuguese Macanese attitude toward the Chinese, were marked by pragmatism, laissez-faire, and cooperation, a policy that was in tune with Macau's exceptional position as a hub of economic and commercial activity on the frontier of two worlds. The Chinese in Macau never clamored for inclusion into China. Indeed, many came to Macau from the mainland as political and economic refugees, but did not protest when it became inevitable. They acquired, however, a distinguishable identity as Macanese Chinese vis the rest of China's people, though this will inevitably fade after the handing over of Macau. Ethnic relations. Ethnic relations in Macau, though hierarchical and rooted in a colonial relationship, developed into a largely harmonious and relaxed pattern. Major tensions did occur when China interfered in the internal affairs of the city, as happened occasionally in the 19th century and in 1966, during the Cultural Revolution, when there were Chinese-inspired pro-communist riots. Throughout its history, Macau always received people from many places, either forced slaves from Africa, or voluntary Indians, Malay, Filipinos. It also was a hospitable place for refugees, as most evident before and during World War II, when the Japanese offensives drove some 160,000 people, mainly Chinese, to the city, and after 1949, when the communists took over in China. Thank you for listening, friends. Keep support and keep going.